First of all, I want to thank the media and the audience that are going to watch us live due to a tragic shooting, ICE-related. This is where we have to adjust. They're all going to be covering on us live, so just remember to speak into the camera. So again, first of all, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm State Senator Susan Rubio. I represent the 22nd Senate District. And today is a very important day for victims and survivors as we gather on this Domestic Violence Awareness Month to remember the victims that are no longer with us, but also acknowledge those that are still suffering harm and abuse behind closed doors. But before we move forward, I do want to take a moment of silence for those victims that could not be with us here today and who have passed. Thank you. We certainly want to honor their memory. So today, once again, I'm so excited to be here for several reasons. Because we want to make sure that we put a face to some of the tragedies and that we get to hear from victims directly how domestic violence impacts them. The other piece is I'm really eager to share with you pieces of legislation that we're going to be introducing this coming year that is going to protect lives. First of all, I wanted to share that as I stand here before you, I too am a victim of domestic violence. When my story broke nearly 10 years ago, victims reached out to me, not just from the United States, but around the world. So this is very deeply personal to me. But one of those stories stands out. A woman shared with me that she stayed with her abuser for 18 years. 18 years she was psychologically abused, physically assaulted, and even after he passed, after 18 years, she still didn't have the courage to tell her family or her friends. That's how deeply rooted domestic violence is, the trauma the victims have to endure. So, once again, in America, victims and their children are often assaulted and killed every single day. But some of us keep moving forward while families are left behind to pick up the pieces. I also want to highlight that I work with mothers of murdered children. In the last 10 years, there have been nearly 1,000 children killed at the hands of abusers, of their parent, simply because a victim decided to leave the relationship. So we know that children are often casualties of this ugly epidemic. And parents have to endure such unimaginable tragedy and pain. When I became a senator, I knew what my mission was. I knew that I would be fighting for justice. I would be fighting for these victims who don't have a voice and those who are no longer with us and they're calling out to us from the grave. That is my mission. It will continue to be my mission. And I'm so honored to stand together with all these advocates who share that mission and will continue to be loud about what we need to do to protect lives. The first bill that I want to introduce in the legislature is called the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, which would protect victims from their abusers. It will require abusers with a restraining order to wear a GPS monitor. Victims will receive alerts if their abusers come near them, allowing them critical time to seek help, get away, find a place where they're safe. We have used tracking devices, GPS, to track our food, our Ubers. We have air tags that track our animals, our property. It is about time that we do the same to save lives. Thank you. California has always led the way, so I'm very clear about that. But when it comes to domestic violence, we're falling short. In Tennessee, they already have a program where they're tracking abusers that works. In the UK, they're starting a pilot program to track offenders of shoplifting. Second offense, they get an ankle monitor. It is unconscionable that they place more value on property than we do on human lives. And it's time that we fix that. The other item that I wanted to share is that a lot of critics will say, how is this going to work? It's never been done. This cannot happen. But technology continues to evolve. Every day we see it, from our iPhones to our cameras to everything that I've mentioned. And it really baffles me that we're not willing to take this step to figure out, how do we save children from harm, victims from harm? How do we keep our community safe? We really should invest the time and the effort to do what Tennessee is doing and try to do what the UK is doing for property. The second bill that I wanted to highlight is SB 738, the Reclaim Act. This will help victims to be free from harassment. Abusers often use the court system to continue to harass and annoy their victims. It prevents abusers from filing frivolous lawsuits to continue to monitor, intimidate, harass, control, and financially exhaust their victims. It is especially problematic when abusers use the discovery process to obtain personal information that otherwise would be protected by a restraining order. That must stop. The Reclaim Act will truly close that loophole to ensure that victims are truly free from harm and abuse, and they can truly reclaim their freedom from their abuser. These bills are about justice, safety, and accountability. It is time that we empower victims to come forward. It is time that we stop dragging our feet every time a victim calls out for help. It is time that we help them gain that courage to come forward to a friend, to a family, to their community. And in a few minutes, you're going to hear from families that have been impacted. I want to leave you with this. Domestic violence doesn't just affect the victim. Even when a victim is gone, even when a victim's been murdered, there's still an entire family that's left behind, crying, trying to put the pieces back together. And again, in a few minutes, you're going to hear their story. So please allow me now to introduce Assemblymember Blanca Rubio, who will also be saying a few words.
Hello, everyone. I'm Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio, and I proudly represent the 48th Assembly District in the state legislature. I'm honored to stand here alongside all of you, many of you who we've worked together many, many times, and I am the chair of the Select Committee on Domestic Violence in the Assembly. As we highlight Domestic Violence Awareness Month, it is an honor to stand before you to acknowledge and to support Senator Rubio in her legislation and support all of you in the efforts that you have so diligently been working on for many, many years. I want to thank all of the advocates for all their hard work and the continued effort to protect and uplift survivors. I also want to acknowledge survivors who continue to use their stories and their voices to fight for those who are not able to advocate for themselves. As a legislator, I have spent my career fighting and advocating for survivors and their needs. I will continue to do so till my very last day in office. This year, I remain committed to protecting survivors and the vital resources they need to preserve and get back on their feet. We have a really, really bad budget situation in Sacramento, and the last thing we wanted is to cut resources for organizations and for victims of domestic violence. And we know that the federal government has made many cuts to our funding for victim resources and support programs. I stood alongside my colleagues to fight for the inclusion of VOCA, which is the Victims of Crime Act supplemental funding this year in this year's budget. It's very difficult for me. In the 10 years that I've been in office, every single year we have to fight. It is not just given to us, it's always a fight for us to make sure that that funding is allocated. And it's difficult as a family member of a domestic violence victim survivor to have to go every single year and basically start all over again, say, well, let me tell you why this funding is needed. But that is the work that we are all tasked to do. And again, many of you have been with me and alongside Senator Rubio on this fight. And I am proud to say that we succeeded. Thanks to the tireless efforts of advocates and like-minded legislators, we secured $100 million. $100 million. The original allocation was $100,000. Just so you know how very little these efforts were talked about. But we got $100 million. And we will keep fighting every single year for that funding. As I enter now my 10th year as a legislator, I remain committed to introducing legislation and supporting legislation that prioritizes survivors and the needs while we hold abusers accountable. We must keep fighting to fund prevention services and programs that will hopefully one day put an end to domestic and sexual violence. When we talk about domestic violence openly, we create communities where survivors feel safe, supported, and most importantly, believed. As we all know, domestic violence thrives in silence and in secrecy. Let this month be a reminder that silence helps abusers. Speaking up saves lives. I want to thank my senator and my sister for her continued leadership and advocacy in this space. The changes we seek and the work we do is not possible without collaboration from advocates to legislators. We all play a part in creating a safer and more impartial California. The responsibility to end domestic violence doesn't solely fall on the survivors. The responsibility falls on all of us to create a supportive environment where domestic violence victims and survivors can speak up, and we can hopefully prevent our kids, our children from going through the same thing. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce our sheriff for the County of Los Angeles. Sheriff Luna is here. We really appreciate you being here. We know that we also count on law enforcement for that support. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon to everybody. I want to first start off by thanking the senator and assembly member for their proactiveness in working up in the legislature and our communities to make sure that no survivor or victim is lost in sometimes the system that is frustrating to all of us. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I want to thank our law enforcement partners, other members of our department who are completely committed to this cause, dedicated legal service providers, community-based organizations, and tireless victim advocates. Thank you. Thank you so much for standing here with us, not only today, and whether, yes, it's Domestic Violence Month or awareness, but you know what? You stand with us, whether it's October, whether it's May, whether it's December, whether it's 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning. And that becomes very, very important. But the biggest thank you today really goes to the survivors that have joined us here today. Because we garner strength from your resilience. It isn't easy. We're the first ones who understand that. Your courage is a driving force behind every policy change, every arrest we make, and every prevention effort that we discuss and implement. We see you. We are dedicated to protecting each and every one of you. Today we speak with one voice and deliver a very clear message. Domestic violence is a very serious crime that demands urgent, united action. We stand together for safety, justice, and healing. Nationally, an average of 24 people every minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States. In Los Angeles County, that trauma is reflected in the thousands of emergency calls for service that we field annually. Calls that represent, and these are numbers, but they literally represent lives and dangers and families that have been fractured in one way or another. The impact of this violence reaches far beyond the immediate victims. We know that over 15 million children in the United States are exposed to intimate partner violence each and every year. Often these children bear the invisible burden of trauma, facing greater risk of mental health challenges, academic struggles, and perpetuating the cycle of violence. Ending this crime means protecting our children, our next generation. Let me be clear. Domestic violence is a crime. Domestic violence is a crime. It is not a private matter. When responding to domestic violence calls, our first non-negotiable priority is the victim's safety. Law enforcement has a responsibility to hold accusers accountable. We recognize that many survivors, especially among our diverse immigrant communities, may have stopped reaching out to nonprofits or government agencies because they fear immigration consequences. It is also common for abusers to use a person's legal status as a weapon and threaten their victims with deportation if they report the abuse. No one should have to choose between their safety and their immigration status. I want to reassure our immigrant communities that you can get help, report abuse, and we will investigate the crime regardless of your legal status. The LA County Sheriff's Department, local law enforcement, does not enforce civil immigration laws. We aggressively investigate every report to ensure abusers face justice. Working closely with prosecutors, we focus resources on identifying and targeting high-risk repeat offenders to break the cycle of trauma. The quality of our response and the compassion, dignity, and respect shown in every interaction reflects our core values. These values are upheld by our dedicated domestic violence liaisons assigned to the Office of Constitutional Policing and our Training Bureau. Our liaisons ensure our training curriculum stays current and aligned with the California officer standards and evidence-based practices. All deputies receive training in core skills that prioritize victim safety, support victim-based prosecution, and enhance understanding of abuse dynamics. Creating lasting change requires collaboration beyond our department. Our domestic violence liaisons serve as primary points of contact to the Los Angeles County Domestic Violence Council. This formal commitment means we have a direct seat at the table with those who understand the needs of survivors, our partners in legal aid, the shelters, and community-based organizations. We listen to advocates and survivors and integrate their expertise into how we serve our communities. So just to finalize, my call to action to each and every one of us, each and all of you listening out there, is October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month closes. We carry the national theme forward with survivors always. This is more than just a slogan. It is a promise to stand with survivors every day in every way. To our community, if you are experiencing abuse or suspect someone that is experiencing abuse, please do not stay silent. Tell somebody. That old saying, if you see something, hear something, read something, let us know. We don't want people to suffer in silence. Thank you very, very much. And I believe next I am introducing Leticia Carabello.
Thank you. Yes. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. I am Letitia Carabello, a mother to 3 beautiful, amazing, wonderful kids. My youngest, Angelina Gonzalez, had accomplished so much by the time she was only 17 and had such a bright future. She was the light of our family, sweet and loving, beauty and brains. She was always willing to help others, going above and beyond. Angelina was always determined to set and accomplish new goals, from band to nursing, from varsity cheerleader and then wrestler. She was also ASB governor and was very artistic. She even won first place in the 2024 31st District Congressional Art Competition. Achieving this, all is having a job as well. Angelina was so funny. She had the best spirit and would light up any room. Her laugh was contagious, always smiling and trying to make everyone feel included. Like I said, she was everything. On December 20th, 2024, all those dreams she had and that we had for her were taken from us. She was murdered gruesomely by her ex-boyfriend. She tried to do the right thing by walking away from the relationship, got lured back in by control he had over her. Domestic violence comes in different ways and forms. It does not discriminate. This has been the worst nightmare that I can't wake up from. Every day our family suffers without her. All her dreams and promised future was just stolen from us. We need to bring awareness that domestic violence isn't just physical. It can be control, isolation, and so much more. If you are in a situation with domestic violence and want to get out, please don't do it alone. Please don't make the same mistake Angel did and think you can get out by yourself. Please ask for help. She trusted him and he took her life and he took our Angel away. Justice for Angel and justice for victims.
Hello, my name is Karen Chun. I want to thank Senator Rubio today for inviting me here to share my story. On August 22nd, my estranged father, that my mother had been desperately trying to separate from for the past 2 years, entered her home and murdered her. He then waited for my sister, who also lived there, to arrive home and murdered her as well, before cowardly and selfishly ending his own miserable life. This was a man who had a stay-away agreement, a criminal protective order, and 3 domestic violence restraining orders against him because he was heard on audio saying that he would shoot all of us and kill himself. Had I been in that house that day, I have no doubt I too would have succumbed to the same fate as my mother and sister. It took my mother the nearly 40 years they were married to summon up the courage to finally try and leave him. The most dangerous time for a survivor of domestic violence is when they try to leave their abuser. 75% of domestic violence-related homicides occur upon separation, and there is a 75% increase of violence upon separation for at least 2 years. These are known statistics. He was a known abuser. And still, the system failed her, failed my sister, failed me. They looked at my father as an elderly 70-year-old man incapable of actually committing any violence. And because of this oversight, my family paid the ultimate price. My incredibly healthy and brilliant 69-year-old mother that I expected to live well into her 90s, maybe longer, and my incredibly kind and selfless sister who would not live to see her 41st birthday next month, both of them gone in an instant. The 2 most important people in my life were ripped away from me because our society does not currently have any adequate measures of protection in place for victims of domestic violence. Does anyone realistically think that a piece of paper is going to stop someone who is committed to inflicting pain or harm on others? In the eyes of the law, my father was restrained from owning a gun. He was restrained from being within 100 yards of us, our homes, or our work. None of those things mattered. None of those things stopped him. Senator Rubio is here today not only highlighting the dangers that victims of domestic violence face every day, but she is here offering real substantive change with her Domestic Violence Prevention Act. This is a bill that can and will save lives if implemented by our government. I recently came across a social media post from Francesca Psychology that touched upon grief and trauma. I learned that beyond just the passage of time, what is actually needed for people to heal is new experiences. Experiences that can show our nervous system a different reality. We don't just heal through the absence of pain, but by creating new corrective experiences. So I am here today to ask your help in creating a new and healing reality, one where victims of domestic violence are taken seriously and protected by the systems and institutions that are currently not equipped to do so. One where a scared and devoted mother, terrified for the safety of herself and her children, doesn't have to stay with her abuser for decades out of fear that her abuser will never be held accountable for his actions. One where threats against victims' lives are seen as a very real probability and not just hyperbole. My mother and sister did nothing to deserve such a violent and cruel death. They were kind and good. They have been my source of love, guidance, and protection my entire life. Losing them has ripped a hole in my heart that will never be fully healed. And while it brings me so much pain to have to stand here before you and share my story in such a public manner, I would do anything to keep someone else from having to feel this pain. If even one person is spared from having to endure the loss of a loved one in this way, it will all have been worth it. While I can never go back and change what has happened, I feel a moral obligation and a personal duty to my mother and sister to do everything I can to create a different outcome for others. I sincerely hope everyone will support Senator Rubio's Domestic Violence Prevention Act to protect victims of abuse. The last thing I want is to be standing here again next year for the same thing, only with more people sharing their own tragic stories that could and should have been prevented. Thank you.
I want to thank the victims for sharing their story. Before I close, I'm also going to bring service providers and people that you need to hear from. I'm going to let Lam Pham, Executive Director, Domestic Violence Council for County of Los Angeles of Public Health. She'll be next, followed by Chris Nakery, Associate Director of Public Policy Strategies at the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence. Both organizations who've been instrumental in partnering with me in different ways to ensure that we continue to use our voices in the best possible way to come up with real solutions. So I'm going to start with Lam.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Lon Pham, and I'm the Executive Director of LA County Domestic Violence Council. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, as you know, a time to remember victims and survivors, and a time to raise awareness, and a time to confirm our commitment to work which prevent and end domestic violence in our communities. I would like to thank our speakers today, starting with the Chun and the Gonzalez family. Thank you for your courage and the sharing of your experiences to prevent other families from experiencing the same loss, that we may all be aware of and improve the support that we have for survivors in our communities. I want to thank you to Assemblymember Bianco, Rubio, and Sheriff Luna for your commitment to ending domestic violence and for your leadership to improve systems response for survivors. And a special thank you to Senator Rubio for your longstanding leadership and continuous advocacy in policies, protocols, and response to end domestic violence in California. Today's event highlights the effort which is needed to end violence. The work to prevent and end violence is not the work that can be accomplished by survivors alone or one agency or one community. It is the work that is needed for our collective. Ending domestic violence requires coordinated effort which centers on the experiences of survivors, an effort which calls for cross-agency collaboration and partnership. I'm honored to be with you today. I feel privileged to be in a county and a state with leadership that values the experiences of survivors and openness to improve response. LA County Board of Supervisors have passed numerous boards and directives in recent years to support survivors and DV organizations. Senator Rubio has championed many legislation which informed by survivors, and the California Partnership has been instrumental in highlighting the needs and gaps for survivors and providers in our communities. I thank all of you during Domestic Violence Awareness Month and for your efforts year-round in the prevention and ending of violence in our community. So I appreciate your time, and special thank you again to Senator Rubio.
Thank you.
My name is Christopher Negri. I'm Associate Director of Policy at the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, the statewide domestic violence coalition. I want to thank first the families who've shared such powerful words for their work and for their advocacy. So thank them for that. And I want to thank as well Senator Susan Rubio for this opportunity. Domestic violence programs across California and the nation are facing a tremendous amount of uncertainty right now. Programs that were already run on incredibly tight budgets do not know if the federal funds that they depend upon will continue, and are facing as well uncertainty over whether they will be able to serve all survivors. We are grateful to Senator Rubio for leading the charge in trying to protect access to domestic violence services by all survivors, regardless of their immigration status. We know that domestic violence does not discriminate. It affects all, regardless of their immigration status, race, class, and gender. And when it happens in the shadows, when survivors are afraid to reach out for help, we know that people suffer and some tragically die. Right now, many survivors across the state are being presented with an impossible choice, facing the threat of being detained and deported for seeking help, or remaining in dangerous domestic violence situations. That is not right. It is not good for our society. And that is the reason why we continue to work with Senator Rubio to try to find solutions that will increase access to services for all survivors. At the same time, our state must continue to prioritize victim services programs and the work that they do, serving almost 1 million Californians each year in the wake of crime. These programs are at risk of catastrophic cuts that would compromise services for survivors if the state does not step in. Thank you to Senator Rubio, Assemblymember Rubio, Senator Eloise Gomez-Reyes, Assemblymember Pilar Shivo, and many others for their leadership in advocating for $100 million in state-level funds for victim services programs. Thank you for that. This year, we look for the state to step in again and to allocate those funds to maintain funding for our life-saving programs, which serve not just victims of domestic violence, but also of sexual violence, human trafficking, elder abuse, child abuse, and other crimes. As we commemorate Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we must continue to fight for California and a country that fully values and supports survivors. And we thank Senator Rubio for her leadership in that struggle.
I want to thank everyone that joined us here today, but I didn't want to get ahead of the family, so I want to take a moment to thank Angel's family. I met them first at her funeral in Azusa. They had so many people there, all her student friends from cheerleading, from wrestling. She was so well loved and so well respected, and it's really tragic that her life was cut short. I also want to thank Karen, who just shared her story about her mother, her sister, and that is why I'm pushing forward with that policy. We need to be able to notify victims when their abusers are near, when they're about to violate the restraining order, to give victims a fighting chance to get out. I wanted to also acknowledge Ana Estevas, who couldn't be here a few years back. We passed Peaky's Law, and now it's named after her 5-year-old little boy who was forced to go with her abusive husband. She had left him, and the same way took out his rage on their son. He was 5 years old. Again, his name was Peaky, and now we have Peaky's Law to ensure that courts are better equipped to understand the depth of relationships and trauma. And I will continue to push forward policies. I want to thank Assemblymember Blanca Rubio, my sister, who not only has fought together with me for policy, but personally the last 10 years. I want to share that it's been 10 years since my divorce. It's been 7 years since my first restraining order, 5 years since my second restraining order, 5 months since my third restraining order, 3 restraining orders. And when I heard Karen talk about her mother's 3 restraining orders, Karen's mom got her restraining orders, walked away, and she's not here with us today. Angelina walked away from the relationship. She's also not here with us today. And so we have to understand domestic violence is not that simple for a victim. They have to contend with a lot of issues, whether it's safety or harm to their families, or just simply not understanding the dangers they're in. But I want to just share this with you, that I feel that perpetrators get the benefit of the doubt often. A well-dressed abuser is too polished to be violent. An intelligent abuser is too smart to be a predator. A wealthy abuser is too cultured to be dangerous. And a prominent member of society is too nice to be capable. What I will say is that, as we heard in Karen's story, her father was 70 years old. And no one thought he was capable. And yet, he inflicted such harm to her family. And even after 3 restraining orders and threatening to kill her mom, he couldn't be stopped. So I want to make sure that we stop assuming that we can recognize evil in society when we see evil. It starts by recognizing that violence hides behind titles, wealth, and often standing right before us when we don't think a person is capable of. So I ask that we give more attention to detail, that we believe victims when they tell us they're being harmed, that we stop questioning why they didn't leave. But I also want to make sure that we understand that it's a collaborative effort. So I want to say thank you to Sheriff Luna. I see a lot of police officers in the background, sheriffs and other public safety members. We value you. We appreciate you because you're the people we call when we're in danger. So I need you to be around. I need you to be protected. I need you to have the resources so that we can call on you and you're equipped to handle the depth of the crisis, the epidemic that is domestic violence. But I will say this to victims: you need to know that we hear you, we see you, and we're not going to stop fighting for you. To abusers, you will not get away with it. We're watching you. So before you lay a hand on another victim, know that we're coming after you. You will be brought to justice. Maybe not today, but in the near future. Thank you everyone for joining us here today. Thank you to Angel's mom, and thank you to Karen for sharing her story, and to everyone up here for standing in the heat. Big round of applause to everyone. And we appreciate your collaboration, and we'll let you know what happens with the bills next year. Thank you.